Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new upper receiver from my company and myself, of course, Focus Shooting LLC. This is the NSR Pro. Now, this is our first and probably only lightweight upper receiver. This is a pretty lightweight upper receiver with a pencil barrel, lightweight BCG. We'll get into all of that later on. But in general, I'm not actually a big fan of lightweight builds, as they tend to suck to shoot, and I do like to shoot quite a bit. Now, before we get into the review, of course, full disclosure, this is an upper receiver that I myself make and sell through Focus Shooting LLC, so I do stand to benefit from its sale. So take everything that I'm saying as basically a sales pitch with a long explanation. Now, getting into the parts list, now this is of course geared to be a more lightweight build, and overall the upper receiver with an A2 flash hider comes in at like 3 pounds 6 ounces. So it is a fairly lightweight upper receiver, and if you were to choose your parts tastefully, you could end up with a sub 6 pound full setup AR-15, which is pretty darn lightweight. Now, getting into the main component of basically any AR-15, that's going to be the barrel. Now, the barrel on this specific model, this is the 14.7 inch 5.56 barrel from Ballistic Advantage. However, this is their pencil profile. Now, the pencil profile, some of you will and will not be familiar with it. It is a very, very thin profile with a 0.625 inch gas journal versus your standard 0.750 inch. So it does shave a half pound to a little bit more depending on your profile that you're comparing it against. So basically, you have a very thin straight taper. I believe this is like 0.7 down to a 0.625 inch gas block journal, of course, a slight downward taper, and then a slight taper up to your 1/2x28 threads. Now, the barrel itself, this is a 4150 chrome moly vanadium steel, which is a very tough, a very durable steel. However, again, on this pencil profile, there's just not a lot of it here. 14.7 inch barrel, mid-length gas system. We'll get into the gas port size, though these were opened up for this specific application, but we'll get into that in just a minute. This is a 1-in-7 twist barrel, and we will get into detailed accuracy testing as well as taking these upper receivers out to 700 yards, which we were able to take these out to distance repeatedly with heavy ammunition. Overall, in general, I'm not a huge fan of lightweight barrels. Even though I am selling this, I'm still going to be harsh on it because, again, I personally am not that big of a fan of them. They tend to have less accuracy overall. You might find a load that they like, but overall, over a wide variety of loads, they'll tend to have inconsistent accuracy versus a heavy barrel. Heavy barrels just tend to deal with harmonics better, tend to have more consistent harmonics, and therefore perform more consistently over a wide variety of loads. You can always find a ammunition that a specific barrel likes, but overall, in general, they're going to be less accurate. On top of the fact they heat up much faster, they have more deflection. If you throw on a suppressor, you're going to have a bigger point of aim shift, or point of impact shift, of course. So there are some downsides to a pencil barrel. The main upside is you get a very lightweight barrel that doesn't put all of that weight at the front of the gun, helps to balance it out a little bit better. And if you're more moving than shooting, it can help you out quite a bit in terms of your personal durability. Now, on this specific upper receiver, which this is actually test upper number 2, we have 2 test uppers for this build series, as was using some parts that I didn't have a lot of prior experience with. So I wanted to get a higher round count on multiple test uppers rather than just one, which is what I usually do. All of them get test fired, of course, but I usually put a much higher round count on a singular test upper. In this case, on 2 test uppers to kind of make sure that we weren't going to have any problems down the road with these upper receivers. Now, the gas block on our NSR Pro upper receivers is the exact same as our standard Mark series. The main difference is that it is, of course, a 0.625 inch versus a 0.750 inch. So you have a set screw style. These are 2 30 inch pounds with high temperature 272 Permatex thread locker. Basically, it's a red thread locker that goes up to 450 degrees versus the standard 300 degrees. Those are set to 30 inch pounds and then marked off with a white paint pen. On top of all of our gas blocks are pinned in place. These are no different, so they will never shift on you, and removal of them can be quite difficult if you don't have the right tools. And I have had some customers strip out gas blocks when trying to replace them with adjustables or what have you. These ones here, I would really prefer if you just contact me first so we can get you squared away on there and you don't accidentally strip one out. Once you strip one out, they are, of course, much harder to change. Now, moving out to the muzzle device, they all ship with a standard A2 flash hider. However, Any muzzle device that you want can be added on top, and the pin and weld process, because this is of course a 14.7. 14.7 is very conducive to pin and weld muzzle devices. Whatever you want, whatever suppressor adapter, whatever it happens to be, if you want that thrown in, you can get that at dealer cost plus a free pin and weld. So again, whatever you want to do for the muzzle device can be done, but standard they'll come with just your regular A2 flash hider, or in this case, this is actually one of those extended ones that you can pin and weld on there if you so desire. Now, the second half of the heart and soul of the NSR Pro is going to be these low mass BCGs. Now, your standard BCGs are going to come in at around 11.7 ounces with a slight bit of variation in there. Now, these ones come in at 8.9 ounces or about 25% lighter, which is going to reduce your reciprocating mass, your recoiling mass by about 25% and give you a much lower recoil impulse because, of course, you're dealing with less weight. Now, earlier on, I mentioned that lightweight builds usually tend to have a poor shooting experience. They're either slightly overgassed for what they are, or just by virtue of them being so light and having a full mass BCG, they tend to suck to shoot as they just don't have as much weight soaking up that recoil. Basically, if you cut the weight in half of any object, apply the same force to it, you get double the movement, double the felt recoil, if you will. Throwing in a low mass BCG is a great way to basically instantly reduce your recoil by 20 to 30%. Now, these specific carriers and bolts, these are from RTB. Now, the carriers themselves look suspiciously similar to Odinworks low mass BCG. However, I can't tell you exactly who the OEM manufacturer is. The carrier itself is 8620, very nicely skeletonized out, so they remove a lot of steel. Now, it is still steel, so it is still going to provide more strength than other materials or aluminum low mass BCGs, which I absolutely do not recommend because over time those will start to deform, especially if you get them hot. The bolt itself is a standard nitride 9310 bolt that is MPI tested. Everything is standard on there. It does have a Viton enhanced O-ring extractor on there. So it does have very good extraction. You'll notice that the extractor and ejector are working very well. It has a very consistent ejection and extraction. So as far as the bolt, cam pin, firing pin retainer, those are all standard and completely interchangeable with anything else on the market. The carriers themselves, though, are going to be very skeletonized, very low weight. They do retain your forward assist cuts. Personally, these upper receivers do not have forward assists. However, some people say that it gives more space inside of the upper receiver to cut through dirt and debris, so they're fine to be there. Again, you don't need them in these specific ones, but they are there if you threw this into another upper receiver. Now, we didn't just stop there, though, with a low mass BCG. We also wanted people to be able to tune how these shoot. So whatever sort of ammunition, suppressor use, whatever it's going to be, we wanted to give you guys the option of making them shoot very, very softly. So what we went with on here, these are actually Rubber City Armory adjustable gas keys. Now, this is the main product that I was not concerned about, but I wanted to get more time with to see how they perform in, harder environments, higher round counts, so on and so forth. Now, your standard carrier keys are 4130, generally speaking, grade 8 fasteners with a gasket sealer in between to just make sure that they are at 100% efficiency. With the Rubber City Armory, it is actually 4140, which just has a higher carbon content than 4130, and you have true grade 8 fasteners. Now, on top of that, the geometry of the key itself is a little bit different. You have radiused front and back corners to reduce some of the wear and tear on your upper receiver as it's moving forward and back. Other than that, it's fairly standard, except of course for your adjustment. So it uses a adjustment methodology that is very simple. Now, this isn't something that I would want to be adjusting on the fly. What I've done, and what I recommend everyone who buys these does, is take your upper receiver and the weakest ammunition you're going to shoot through it in whatever sort of setup you have, your buffers, whatnot, and then I would tune it to where it is just barely cycling your worst, your weakest ammunition, and then I would turn it a quarter to a half turn more open to give you that little bit of headroom for, worse environments, a dirtier carrier, so on and so forth. Now, the adjustment methodology itself, as I mentioned, this is definitely a set and forget. the fastest way to induce problems in any adjustable system is to adjust it down too far, which is something that I often fall into the trap of doing as well, because we're always chasing, the softest, the lowest recoil possible. Now, the adjustment methodology itself, you have two very small screws, which are somewhat easy to lose, but this is again why this isn't something I would want to be adjusting in the field. This is very much a set and forget. So you have a very small one, and then a little bit of a longer one internally as well. And then you just rotate it to close or open, of course. So it was set very, very softly shooting. And then to lock it in place, you take your secondary one, the short one or the long one, either one, it really doesn't matter. And then of course you simply tighten that up against the one that's a little bit deeper into the key itself, and that locks them in place. Now, these gas keys were the main area that I wanted to test on multiple upper receivers at a higher round count to make sure that they weren't changing over time, or with either more pressure or less pressure, so on and so forth. I wanted them to be stable over a long period of time, and of course a higher round count. Now this one right here, we tuned within the first 20 rounds or so, and then we set and forget it. Now this one has about 1,000 rounds on it, right at 1,000 rounds, and from round 20 to round 1,000, there was absolutely no change in ejection pattern whatsoever. And that is of course exactly what I was looking for from these keys. I basically not only wanted a low mass BCG, something that would automatically reduce your felt recoil, but also allow you to fine tune it for, again, whatever ammunition, suppressor, setup, so on and so forth. Now, moving on to the rails, if you're familiar with our other builds, this is going to look very familiar to you. This is a Breek Arms 13.7-inch M-LOK RG2S rail. Very, very nice rails for the money. These are very affordable rails. Unfortunately, they still have all of the features that you want. They have M-LOK at the 3, 6, and 9, a full pick rail on top, a wedge lock system, which is, in my opinion, superior to clamping systems. It is going to provide you a lot more consistent pressure over the barrel nut. The barrel nuts themselves are steel, which does add a little bit of weight, but even so, the total weight on the RG2 13.7 comes in at 12.4 ounces with the barrel nut. So overall, they're still very lightweight, very strong with a decent feature set. There are some lighter handguards on the market, but again, for the money, these are incredibly hard to beat. Now, moving back from there, the upper receivers that I went with on the NSR Pro, these are actually Aero Precision slick side upper receivers. They are basically identical to standard 7075 T6 mil spec forged upper receivers. The main difference, though, is, of course, they deleted the forward assist, which only saves you like 0.3 ounces in terms of the upper receiver, but then also saves you like an ounce, ounce and a half in terms of the steel forward assist. Again, not the most needed thing on an AR-15. Some people like to see them, some people hate them, but on this, which is, of course, a build that is geared towards being lightweight, deleting them and going with a little bit lighter of an upper receiver, no forward assist, kind of made sense. Now, basically the last major component to talk about on the upper receiver, this is going to be the Breek Arms Warhammer charging handle. Again, if you're familiar with the Pro line, you've seen these quite a bit. These are true 7075 T6 aluminum charging handles. They are ambidextrous. On top of that, they have a slight cutout to redirect gases out to the right if you are shooting suppressed. So not only do they have some gas busting characteristics, but they are also true 7075, ambidextrous, basically everything you want in a charging handle without breaking the bank. And of course, they come in at just under 1 ounce, so they're not adding any weight either. So overall, on the build, I believe this comes in with an A2 flash hider, again, comes in and with nothing else on it, of course, because the more stuff you add to it, just going to increase the weight. They come in at 3 pounds, 6 ounces. So depending on what you're selecting for optics, lights, grips, guards, whatever it may be, you should be able to set up a lightweight AR-15 that comes in at under 6 pounds. Now, the main purpose of these builds for me personally is, one, to be a lightweight upper receiver that still maintains a very high level of performance. Again, when it comes to actually shooting these upper receivers, they shoot incredibly well, which cannot be said for all lightweight guns out there. So even though these are lightweight with pencil barrels, low mass BCGs, they shoot incredibly well, or of course they can be tuned to shoot incredibly well. On top of that, you're not sacrificing too much in terms of capability. We do have a 14.7 barrel, which is going to give us very good ballistics. On top of that, they're very easy to pin and weld. Now, when we talk about accuracy, pencil barrels just in general are, again, less accurate overall. However, we did test it with some different types of ammunition. And we also were able to take this specific upper receiver with a Burris RT6 out to 700 yards. Now, the accuracy, I believe with HSM 77 grain match, we were able to get 4 rounds touching and then a flyer. Maybe that was the barrel, maybe that was me, can't really say. Overall, that was about a 1.5 MOA group. And then we move on to atomic ammunition, atomic 77 grain, their match ammunition, which never really grouped all that well, but it was consistent, and that was actually the ammunition that we took out to 700 yards. Then our last group, 77 grain Nosler match, that one there came in very good, right at 1 MOA, which I was very happy with that group at 1 MOA. So overall, while I do think that the NSR Pro is going to be less accurate than my other upper receivers in general, you can still find loads that it likes, and of course, you can still take it out to distance if you're doing your part. Now, when we took it out to 600 and 700 yards with the Burris RT6 with 77 grain atomic ammunition, it really was not the ideal circumstance, as basically within the reticle, you don't have enough information to get out that far. So I was having to Kentucky windage off the reticle and then find something to reference off in the background. However, I was still able to make repeat hits at, again, 600 and 700 yards with a 14.7 pencil, throwing admittedly decent ammunition. Again, the 77 grain atomic load never really grouped close to 1 MOA in any of the 10 or so guns that I tested it in, but it was at least consistent at about like 1.5 MOA or so. So it was still able to carry us out to distance. And of course, being 77 grain match ammunition, it does have a much higher BC than your 55 and 62 grain ball load.
There it is. 2 in a row. Three in a row. Four in a row. By the way, the reticle is out of space now. I'm just Kentucky windaging. I'm finding something in the background to reference the reticle off of. Oh, there it is. Again, I'm just holding off into space, even with the entire BDC reticle. Like, you don't have enough info in there to hit it this far, consistently anyways. Now, if you find something good in the background to reference off of, maybe, but that's, again, at a very static target. Two in a row. Three in a row. Four in a row. We out. We out. I'm actually pretty happy with that.
Now, just to go over the build process a little bit, even though it hasn't changed on any of our upper receivers really. So we have a lapped upper receiver. So we lap the face of the upper receiver to ensure a true mounting platform, a true concentric face for the barrel to match up against. On top of that, we bed the barrel to the upper receiver using a expanding hardening compound. It's basically just a Permatex anti-seize solution, not anti-seize solution, sorry, a Permatex Loctite solution that will expand and harden and fill up all of those cracks within your upper receiver, and just make sure that your barrel and your upper receiver have the tightest, most concentric fit possible. On top of that, the barrel nuts are sequentially torqued down 25, 35, and then finally 50 foot-pounds with, again, an anti-seize solution on the threads of the upper receiver to make sure that you can get them off in the future. I've already gone over the gas block, but real quickly, 2 set screws torqued down to 30 inch-pounds with a red thread locker Permatex 272, which goes up to 450 degrees. On top of that, all of our gas blocks are pinned in place. I don't know if I hit that last one. I have to check that. Now, on top of the build process, the warranty also has not changed whatsoever. So the first rebarrel is still free. So when you eventually burn out this barrel, which another thing about pencil barrels is, generally speaking, they will have a reduced barrel life as you are thermal cycling them faster. They heat up much faster, of course. They cool down faster because they're not able to hold as much energy as a heavier, thicker barrel would be. So they do thermal cycle faster. So you will actually burn one of these guys out faster should you subject it to very hard, very aggressive use cases or what have you. On top of that, every component is backed by a basically no questions asked lifetime warranty. The only thing that's not covered by warranty is intentional damage. But should anything break, premature wear, whatever it may be on any of my upper receivers, I will of course fix it for you for free. Now, final thoughts on the NSR Pro plus my preferred use case, if you will. Even though these are a very capable, very flat shooting guns, personally, they're still not what I would consider do-it-all duty guns. What I would put in my top tier, I would grab this gun first for whatever it is that you're coming up with in your head. These are lightweight guns that retain a very high level of performance and capabilities. Now, these are not for every role, and these are not for everybody. These are going to be for people who need lightweight, who need a lightweight upper receiver that, again, still has a certain level of performance. Now, again, I know a lot of lightweight builds, they like to say, oh, it's just as tough, oh, it's just as durable, and the truth is that they're really not as durable as your true duty grade builds. Their components will burn out faster, especially if you're running like a lightweight or low mass BCG. They are going to be prone to cracking, breaking. Not necessarily prone to it, maybe that's the wrong word, but it will happen sooner than it will on a bigger, stronger, heavier piece of material. So again, while these are definitely going to provide many thousands of rounds of trouble-free use, they're still not going to have the same lifetime and hard use potential as other stronger builds will. These are, again, for people who have a need for something that is lightweight. For instance, if you have a use case where you're going to be walking around in the mountains for extended periods of time and you are very weight sensitive and you need to cut as much weight as you can while still retaining a decent level of performance, or in this case, a very high level of performance, then this upper receiver makes a great deal of sense. If you have to do a lot of hiking, a lot of walking, and again, you're in that role, you're going to be very restricted in terms of weight, then a lightweight upper receiver can make a lot of sense. Again, it's absolutely not for everybody in every role. I personally wouldn't reach for one of these first over any of my other builds. However, there are applications, again, where you are carrying the gun for extended periods of time and you need it to be a little bit lighter. So with all of that out of the way, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think of the NSR Pro in the comments down below. And with all of that out of the way, guys, thank you once again for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace out. I think so, but it's also